And that certainly takes us to education, where if you're talking about the problems of disparity, if you're talking about structural racism, certainly policing is not the only area to talk about. There are many areas to talk about, and education must be front and center. There has been so much that needed to be addressed in education in New York City. And from the beginning, what I tried to focus on was a very simple concept, equity and excellence, that we needed to profoundly change the distribution of resources. I like to say very bluntly, our mission is to redistribute wealth. A lot of people bristle at that phrase. That is, in fact, the phrase we need to use. We have been doing this work for 7 years to more equitably redistribute resources throughout our school system. That means pre-K for all, 3K for all, advanced placement courses in every high school, including those that never had a single one. It means changing school funding formulas. There's so many things that we've tried to do to profoundly rebalance the equation. Community schools, focusing on schools that needed the help the most in communities that had not been invested in. That work will continue this year for sure, this hardest of all school years, but starting in September, the Chancellor and I announced our 2021 Student Achievement Plan, which is going to focus on closing the COVID achievement gap and ensuring that there is fairness for our kids, support for them, but with a special focus on the 27 neighborhoods most deeply affected by COVID, and those are Black communities, Latino communities, Asian communities that bore the brunt. So this work has been going on in a lot of different ways over the last 7 years. It has to intensify now, given all the lessons we've learned during this most painful of years. As we look beyond this year, we understand that there are many, many tools, many things we can do differently. And it's time to start using every tool at our disposal to address inequality and to improve the education of all children. And those two things go together, addressing inequality, stopping disparity, and improving education for all. That's one continuous mission. So today we're announcing changes to our high school and middle school admissions policies. And I think these changes will improve justice and fairness, but they'll also make the process simpler and fairer, particularly given what we're dealing with this year and all the results of the coronavirus that have changed the way we have to do things. So beginning right away, and this will be for the 2021-22 school year, but the admissions process obviously will be starting now. For middle schools, there will be a 1-year pause for screens, for screen schools, for those criteria used in quote-unquote screen schools. Those criteria will be put on pause for next academic year and for the admissions process happening now. For high schools, we will eliminate geographic priorities over the next 2 years, thus giving a much bigger swath of the city an opportunity to experience some of our great high schools. We will also be expanding diversity planning to all 32 school districts in New York City. That will happen over the next 4 years. Right away, we're going to get 5 more districts going in that effort. The districts that have done that work have seen extraordinary results. District 3 and District 1 in Manhattan, District 15, the Brooklyn, my district, where I started out as a community school board member, have had tremendous success with diversity programs, with efforts to make schools better for everyone and more inclusive of everyone. And they've shown it can work for everyone. So you're going to see a lot more of that starting now and in the next year and the years ahead. Here to give you a sense of how this will all come together, our Chancellor, Richard Carranza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a year of new challenges and difficult choices, testing our collective strength and endurance as we faced the unknown together. We've had to reinvent the building blocks of public education in the nation's largest school system, from how go to class to a grading policy, attendance, and everything in between. As Chancellor, it's my responsibility to deliver the highest quality education possible to each and every child in this city so that they are prepared for successful, productive life and empowered with the skills that they need to chase their dreams. There are inequities in our city and in our school system that have been exacerbated this year by the COVID-19 health crisis and has had And this COVID-19 health crisis has had a disproportionate impact on our communities of color, our immigrant families, the students whose parents never had the option to work from home, and so many more. The health crisis has also interrupted so many of our normal school year practices as we accommodated its unprecedented wake, including a lack of state testing this year, a revised approach to grading and attendance policies to meet the moment in time. And we took the time to hear feedback and work through this complex and important issue to make sure that we got this right. So I'm appreciative of all of the students and the families and schools that have engaged with us since last spring and over the summer, literally hundreds and hundreds of town halls and meetings. And I want to thank you for your patience as well as we've crafted this new policy. Building on this administration's commitment to equity, we're so proud to announce a common sense approach. Number one, it will directly address the current circumstances attendant to the pandemic. And number two, this will make it simpler and fairer as a process for our families to be admitted to schools that have already gone through so much during this pandemic. So for middle schools with screens, all screens will be paused 1 year because these screens included the use of state exams, which we don't have those exams anymore, and they were canceled due to COVID. We also don't have the grades or the attendance that we can compare to previous years. Using data from the year prior when rising sixth graders were 7 or 8 years old and in their first experience of taking the state test, it's untenable and it's unfair to students. District priorities will still apply. These are young children, and during the extensive admissions-focused community engagement that we conducted in the spring and the summer, we heard loud and clear that families requested that we keep the district priority to allow young children to go to a school closer to their home. Common sense, so we're keeping them in place. For schools that have more applications and seats, admissions will be decided through a lottery-based system. For high schools with screens, we're eliminating geographic priorities for admissions over 2 years, as the mayor, as you've announced. In the first year, we'll start with district priorities, and in the second, we'll extend to all other geographic priorities like borough residents. These geographic screens have kept too many students out of the high schools of their choice. And this is an important step to open back up so that access and opportunity to your high school options aren't limited by where you live. For remaining screens at the high school level, we invite schools to unscreen now. If they and their school communities wish to do so, we will support you. If they wish to maintain academic or other screens, they will use the previous year's state tests, previous year's grades, and the grades from the first part of last year for their screening criteria. And the rubric process, the criteria that is used to rank students, will be more transparent than ever before. We're requiring all schools to publicly post their rubrics on My Schools. DOE Central will run the ranking process to be faster, fairer, and much more transparent. We also heard that loud and clear from all of our engagement sessions. The specialized high school admissions test, the SHAZAT, will continue as required by state law, and registration will open on December 21st for the SHAZAT. Now, I know this is a lot to take in at once for our families, so our enrollment team will be offering more support than ever before and in multiple languages. All rising middle and high school families will receive additional detailed updates on how this will impact them and to help them find an excellent school that is right for them. We remain at the ready to help in any way possible, and these changes will help ensure that our classrooms reflect the great diversity that is New York City. And it's also a true representation of the values that we hold dear as a city, that equity, inclusivity, and accepting nothing less than excellence for all children is at the cornerstone of what we do. Making these changes helps us meet this challenging moment when our children need us the most. And by lifting up all children in all schools, we're able to chart a bold path forward. Mr. Mayor, this is not only the practical thing to do, this is the right thing to do.
Amen. Thank you so much, Chancellor. Chancellor, thank you. You put an immense amount of time and energy into determining the right way forward here under extraordinary and challenging circumstances. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Deputy Chancellor Josh Wallach. I want to thank your whole cabinet that put a lot of energy into figuring out the right way to do this going forward. And this is an action based on this year, but it has a lot of ramification for the future. Also, tremendous thanks to First Deputy Mayor Dean Foulahan and his team, who really focused on how we get this right. Everyone, the Chancellor made clear that based on current state law, we will be administering the specialized high school exam. I want to emphasize that timeline. Registration for the exam begins this Monday, the 21st of December, and the test administration will begin on January 27th. There'll be a lot of information coming out to make sure everyone who wants to participate gets the information they need. The Chancellor and I continue to feel that we need a better way going forward on specialized high schools. I want to make sure it's crystal clear. I still believe the status quo in our specialized high schools is broken. I don't think it's inclusive and fair. I think we need to do better. We understand to do that, we will have to have common ground with communities all over the city. We'll have to listen to people, work with people, obviously see if there's something our legislators in Albany feel comfortable with. But it's important to let people know that process will continue as it has been and when it will be, but it's also important to say we can do better in New York City. Okay. Let me move to a couple other quick things, and again, so much going on. But let's take a moment to reflect on the last 48 hours or so. We came out of the storm. I think the city has come out of the storm very smoothly. I want to really thank everyone at the Sanitation Department and Emergency Management. You did a great job, especially